message was never meant for her. It was meant for someone who was gone forever. On a pale golden morning when the sunlight spilled quietly across the small kitchen table, a tired single father sat staring at his phone with trembling hands. The house was silent except for the soft humming of the refrigerator and the distant laughter of children walking to school down the street. In that fragile silence, a simple message slipped from his fingers, 3 words that carried years of grief, loneliness, and longing. I miss you. But instead of sending it to the old contact he still couldn't bring himself to delete, the message went somewhere else. It went to his boss. And less than an hour later, she was standing at his front door. Before we step into this deeply emotional story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Home with Dad if you believe in kindness, healing, and second chances. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts around the world. The man who sent that message was named Marcus Hale, a 36-year-old father who had learned the hard way that life could change in a single phone call. 3 years. Earlier, Marcus had been living a life that felt simple and complete. He worked as a logistics coordinator for a small construction company, drove an aging pickup truck that smelled faintly of sawdust and coffee, and came home every evening to the warm glow of kitchen lights and the laughter of his wife. Her name had been Adriana. Adriana had been the kind of person who filled a room with warmth without even trying. She loved sunflowers, loud music while cooking dinner, and the habit of dancing barefoot in the living room while their little daughter clapped along. Marcus used to joke that Adriana carried the sunlight wherever she went, but sunlight can vanish without warning. One rainy evening 3 years ago, a truck driver ran a red light. By the time Marcus reached the hospital, the world he knew had already ended. The days that followed blurred together like a long winter storm. There were hospital hallways, quiet condolences, paperwork, and the unbearable moment of explaining to their 4-year-old daughter why Mommy wouldn't be coming home anymore. That little girl was named Sienna, and from that day forward, Marcus stopped being just a husband. He became everything: father, mother, cook, comforter, storyteller, nightmare chaser, homework helper, protector, provider. Some nights he managed well. Other nights he sat on the floor of the bathroom after Sienna fell asleep and wondered how one person could possibly carry so much responsibility while still breathing. But life doesn't pause for grief. Bills arrived every month. School forms needed signatures. Lunchboxes needed packing. Laundry piled up. And so Marcus kept moving forward, step by exhausting step, learning how to braid hair badly, burn pancakes occasionally, and laugh again when Sienna made silly faces during breakfast. The house they lived in was small. A modest 1-story home with pale blue siding and a front porch that creaked whenever someone stepped on the 3rd plank. It wasn't fancy, but Adriana had once filled it with plants, photographs, and laughter. Marcus never had the heart to move anything. Her favorite yellow mug still sat on the kitchen shelf. Her jacket still hung in the closet. Her number still lived in his phone. He never called it. But sometimes, late at night, he opened the contact and stared at it as if memory itself could answer. 3 years passed like that. Then came the morning everything changed. It was a Tuesday, bright and warm, with sunlight drifting through the curtains. Marcus had woken up earlier than usual after a restless night. Sienna had crawled into his bed around 2 in the morning after a nightmare about monsters under the stairs. By the time the alarm rang at 6, Marcus already felt like he'd run a marathon. Still, routine was survival. He made cereal for Sienna, packed her lunch with peanut butter sandwiches cut into small stars, and brushed her hair into something that vaguely resembled a ponytail. By 8, she was off to school. By 8:30, Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. That was when the quiet hit him. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that made memories louder than the present. Marcus unlocked his phone and opened the contact he visited far too often, Adriana. Her picture was still there, smiling under the summer sun at a beach trip they'd taken years earlier. Without really thinking, Marcus typed the words that had lived in his chest for years. I miss you. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he hit send. The message disappeared into the digital world. Marcus exhaled slowly, a quiet ritual he had repeated a few times over the years whenever grief rose too high. But something felt strange. A second later, the phone buzzed. A reply. Marcus frowned. Adriana's number had been disconnected long ago. Confused, he looked down at the screen. His stomach dropped. The message hadn't gone to Adriana. It had gone to Vivian Clark, his boss. Vivian Clark was the regional operations director at the construction firm where Marcus worked. She was known for being calm, intelligent, and extremely professional. In the office, she carried an aura of quiet authority that made meetings feel serious the moment she walked in. Marcus had worked under her supervision for nearly 2 years, and now she had just received a message from him saying, "I miss you." Chucker. Silence in the kitchen suddenly felt unbearable. Marcus's heart began pounding. He imagined the misunderstanding immediately. Did she think he was flirting? Did she think he was being inappropriate? Was he about to lose his job? Panic crept through his chest. He quickly began typing. "Sorry. That message wasn't meant for you." But before he could press send, another message appeared. "I know." Marcus blinked. Another message came seconds later. "Are you home right now?" His confusion deepened. Why would she ask that? He hesitated before replying. Yes. Then he set the phone down, rubbing his tired eyes. Maybe she simply wanted to talk about work. Maybe she wanted to clear the awkward situation quickly. Either way, Marcus prepared himself for an uncomfortable conversation. 40 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Marcus froze. No one ever came by this early. He walked slowly toward the front door, his heart pounding with uncertainty. When he opened it, the morning sunlight framed a tall woman standing on the porch, Vivian Clark. She wasn't dressed in her usual office attire. Instead of a blazer and heels, she wore a simple cream-colored sweater and dark jeans. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and in her hand she held a small brown paper bag. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "I'm really sorry about the message," he began awkwardly. But Vivian gently shook her head before he could finish. Her eyes were soft, thoughtful. She held up the paper bag. "I brought coffee," she said quietly. Marcus blinked in surprise. The situation he had imagined, anger, embarrassment, reprimand, suddenly felt completely different. Vivian stepped slightly closer, her voice calm. "And I thought maybe," she continued, "you shouldn't be alone today." Marcus didn't know why those words hit him so hard. Maybe it was the exhaustion he had been carrying for years. Maybe it was the unexpected kindness, or maybe it was the simple fact that someone had noticed his pain. The lump in his throat grew, heavy. He stepped aside slowly, letting her in. The house still carried the quiet traces of family life. A pink backpack sat by the hallway wall. Small drawings covered the refrigerator door. One crayon picture showed a tall stick figure labeled Dad holding hands with a smaller one labeled Me. Vivian noticed everything. The toys, the photographs, the tiny shoes near the door. "You have a daughter," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "Sienna. She's 7. Vivian placed the coffee cups on the kitchen table. "School?" "Yes." Marcus sat across from her, still unsure how this moment had unfolded so strangely. Vivian looked at him carefully. "I lost someone once too," she said. After a pause, Marcus's eyes lifted. There was no pity in her expression, only understanding. She didn't ask him to explain the message. She didn't ask uncomfortable questions. Instead, they sat quietly with their coffee while the morning sunlight warmed the room, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt seen, not as an employee, not as a struggling father, but as a human being carrying invisible weight. The conversation that followed was gentle and unexpected. Vivian spoke about how grief doesn't follow schedules, how some days it hides quietly, and other days it arrives like a storm. She told Marcus that she had lost her younger brother many years ago, and the emptiness had once convinced her that life would never feel normal again. Marcus listened carefully. Something about her honesty made it easier for him to breathe. Eventually, he spoke too, about Adriana, about the accident, about raising Sienna alone, about the nights he pretended to be strong. Vivian listened without interrupting. When the conversation ended, nearly 2 hours had passed. Marcus walked her to the door. Before leaving, Vivian paused. "You're doing better than you think," she said. Marcus wasn't sure he believed that, but hearing it mattered. Over the following weeks, something small began to change. Vivian never mentioned the message again at work, but sometimes she stopped by Marcus's desk just to check how his day was going. Sometimes she asked about Sienna. Sometimes she left early and said nothing at all. Yet somehow, the heavy loneliness that once filled Marcus's days began to soften. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus took Sienna to the park. She ran across the grass chasing pigeons, her laughter echoing through the warm air. Marcus sat on a bench watching her. For the first time in years,